Hello and welcome to the Ivy League Sisters podcast, where you're invited into the world of high-achieving women who earned that coveted Ivy League degree and now are here to get real and honest about the pressures and expectations that come with claiming this achievement. I'm Lauren Belluccian, and I'm the founder of Ivy League Sisters, a mentorship community where intellectually curious and slightly rebellious women band together to support each other through the personal and professional seasons of life. In this podcast, we peel back the layers of perfection to reveal the authentic, often messy, and always inspiring stories of women who have been where you are. So whether you're an Ivy League graduate, a high achiever in any field, or simply someone striving to live a more authentic life, the Ivy League Sisters podcast is a place where you can realize you're not alone. And if you're new here, like and follow this podcast so you don't miss out on the latest episodes. I hope you enjoy the conversations.
I recently met a young author who's in his 30s, amazing guy, wrote a book, and we met at actually a Wharton recruiting event. It was my first Wharton recruiting event I'd ever been to. I graduated 25 years ago, and I never felt like I was the model Wharton grad. So I never went because I thought, who am I to even tell these kids to go to Wharton when my life is so screwed up? And this was the story I had in my head, that I wasn't measuring up to my Wharton degree because I walked away from McKinsey and I'm working in my family small business. And I don't have 5 houses, and I'm not retiring next year, and I'm not taking my company public. You know what I mean? And so I had all these stories about why I wasn't a legitimate Wharton grad and why I shouldn't be showing up to these events. And this year was a turning point for me, and just really embracing that I'm enough. I'm enough, not just for my kids, because I'm a single mom, not just for my career, because like I said, I work in a small business, but I'm enough for me. And that what I have accomplished in my life is enough, because it just is. And embracing that it just is. And that makes it good enough. And, I met this young man, and we started talking afterwards, and he told me he wrote a book. I'm like, oh my God, you wrote a book? I'm writing a book. He's like, oh really? People tell me all the time. So what? I'm like, well, I have a first draft, and I'm editing. He goes, so you actually did write it? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, people tell me all the time they're writing a book, but they actually haven't done anything. So his voice is in, we've gone on a couple of long walks at the beach together at Torrey Pines, my favorite place to go hiking. And he's like, okay, so how's your book going? He's like, just keep going, keep the momentum. So that's really helped me a lot.
That's great. Yeah. Hearing that you have this now flip of your morning routine, something like trying a different experiment, like shaking it up, is exactly the thing that we need, but we think it's so counterintuitive. I love how you called out, like, this is against everything I was taught and I've been practicing, and I'm all about mindfulness and not getting caught in the hustle. But it's back to, like, they always have to go together, right? These two pieces of ourselves that are like the go-getter, the achiever, the striver, like that part lives within.
And there's a really beautiful part of that. I mean, being the achiever and the striver and the doer feels really, really good, because I'm making shift happen, right? I'm making things work. I'm making the world a better place. I'm helping improve people's lives. And I have to take care of me. Mm-hmm. And taking care of me is actually not selfish.
Right.
Shock of the century.
I know.
Right. I mean, we're taught that, like, stopping and pausing is wasting time. Right. Why are you wasting time? You should be doing stuff. Right. That's the narrative.
So how do you get your achieve? So you start your morning, you tell yourself 2-3 hours. I'm really curious what happens when you're in flow and that alarm goes off. It's like, okay, time to break away and do something.
I'm terrible. I keep going. I have to admit, I keep going. And I'm like, just 10 more minutes. It's kind of like, sleeping in the buzzer, for your sleep alarm. Like, oh, just 5 more minutes. I just not. And I'm like, no. I'm almost to my achiever mind has to get to the end of that section. I can't just walk. Some people are like, oh, timer goes off, walk away. No, I can't.
I hear you. That's exactly how I am. So that's why I was curious what happens. And then I start negotiating with my higher self, the future self that said, no, really, Lord, at 12 o'clock, it's like, it is break time. Like, do your exercise or do whatever that thing is.
Right. And there I am 3 hours later. Okay. So I have a funny story. So I started wearing this Aura ring. because I've been thinking about it and like, do I really want to spend the money? And and back and forth. And then I kept seeing it on everybody's finger. I'm like, okay, I know from my practice that when I see something over and over and over again, it's because that's what I want. And I just have to like own, okay, this is what I want. This is my desire. Okay, I'm going to do it. So I got that one. Plus this flow research that I'm doing, it's really important to understand where your practices are actually helping or hindering you, and like look at the patterns and the data. I'm a data junkie, right? I went to Wharton. I love spreadsheets. That's my love language, so I got to see the data, like show me the money, right? And so I started wearing this Aura ring, and it tracks your sleep and it tracks your deep sleep. Of course, the first night I wore it, I didn't go to bed till midnight. So of course my deep sleep was like 15 minutes. And I'm like, okay, Sydel, that's not acceptable. Like that's not healthy. You know this, but I was working. This was before I started getting up early to work. I was doing my work at night and it was screwing up my sleep. So I'm like, okay, went to bed earlier the next night, we're doing great. And then I started implementing the start working first thing because I was really resistant to that idea for a long time. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do it. So I woke up, went to the bathroom, sat down, started doing my editing. And then when I got up to like actually go take a shower and get dressed and do my morning routine like I normally do, I checked my sleep tracker and I'm like, I didn't sleep 10 hours. Why does it think I slept 10 hours?
Thinks you're sleeping because you're in flow. So it's like restful. It's actually like nourishing your body.
It thought I was in deep sleep while I was editing. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it totally works. So my ring, my heart rate was to the extent that it was same as when I'm in deep sleep. And that's exactly what I'd been learning, is that when your brain waves in deep sleep or in sleep are the same or similar to the brain waves when you are in flow. And the ring
Now I'm wanting one. Now I'm wanting
didn't tell me. I mean, the ring told me that. I'm like, wow. Okay, so this actually works. So that was kind of the ding ding, the data point that I needed to the evidence that this actually works. That my heart rate and my heart rate variability and the breathing rate and everything was the same as if I were sleeping. And then yesterday, you wear it enough days, it starts to tell you what your stress level is.
That's cool.
And because it has to get to know you first. Right. And there were spikes throughout my day yesterday where it's like stress, then stress. And I'm like, I never thought of my day job as stressful. Right. And I started looking at what was I doing at 3:15? Oh, that's right. And that client needed me, but I was doing something else. Right. Or what was that? Oh, that's when somebody asked me a question as they were about to leave to go home and I wasn't prepared for any answer, the conversation. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay. So it's just, again, data on, okay, so when I'm about to see a client, I need to breathe, right?
Yeah, exactly. It really helps you understand yourself. So this is bringing up for me like a question that I continuously like work with and like grapple with, which is like, I believe we're all unique individuals and we are like the lead scientist in our life. Like it is up to us to experiment. Like we can read all the things that say, this is the way you're supposed to do it, and that's the practice. And while research and stuff is valuable in that sense, because it gives us a sense of like maybe where to start, until we start doing it, we don't really know. So I'm always like torn. Like I don't love reading tons of research because I'm like, let me just take the whatever that thing is and apply it to my life and see what actually happens, because there's something also really powerful, the placebo effect.
Right.
When we want something to happen and we believe it to happen.
And whether it's a placebo or real, who cares? If you got the result you wanted, honestly, who cares how you got it? Right. And something I tell my students and my clients is that, we are so used to evaluating and comparing and judging ourselves. Right. And so what I encourage everyone to do is put on a lab coat.
Yep.
And pretend like you are a scientist examining your life. And things are not good or bad. Just like a scientist doesn't go, oh, my results suck. They just go, that's interesting. That's not what I was expecting. Or, oh my God, that was amazing. That's even better than what I thought it would be. But you have an intention to get some sort of results or
data, like it's too much
information. Right. And so I remember when I got divorced, and this is why it's so important to reach out for help, because I would have not gotten this insight if I'd stayed in my head, hitting myself over a baseball bat over marrying the wrong guy. I was so like, why? I'm so stupid. I'm such an idiot. Why didn't I see the signs? Why would I, right? And I reached out to a friend of mine from Wharton, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so stupid. Like, why? Why did this happen? How did I not catch this? I'm so dumb. And he was amazing. He's like, Sydel, you're not an idiot. You made a decision with the information you had at the time. You got new information and you made a new decision. You should be really proud of yourself for making a new decision, because it was scary and it was heartbreaking and it was devastating, and you did it anyway. You have so much courage. And I was like, oh, I never thought of it that way. Right. I saw it as a failure and some sort of, oh my gosh, I get emotional thinking about it. I saw it as it's a way that I had like completely not lived up to the expectation that I had of myself of being a good decision maker and not screwing up and doing everything right.
Yes. That's the thing. That is like that's like such at the core and root of so much self-hatred or shame or whatever you want, judgment. It's thinking that there is a right way.
Yeah.
How much does that create procrastination and like holding ourselves back because we really want to do it right?
Well, I believe in my experience and in watching other people and in coaching other people, the root of procrastination is fear and bad habits. Bad habits. I mean, I had a habit of doing my writing at the end of the day, and I was too tired.
Getting you the results you wanted.
And I wasn't getting it done. I was like, I'll do it tomorrow. Oh God, I'm really so tired. Oh, I had a really exhausting day today. Oh, but maybe I'll just get up and do it in the morning. Maybe. But now that it's my habit to sit down and open up my computer, and the other key point is to have it ready, like do the first step of the thing you're going to do before you go to bed. So it's like on my computer. Wait, all I have to do is open up my computer and it's right there. I don't have to think. I don't have to open it. I have to look for the file. It's there. And it's a habit. I just decided. And it's also, I think, the hardest part, Lauren, is making the decision. Making the decision and knowing that you have a choice. I don't have any more hours of the day than anybody else.
Right. I love that. I love that that's the game. Like that is the great equalizer for humans.
Nobody has any more or less time. Other people have figured out how to, I saw it, and I listened to an amazing podcast with Simon Sinek. I love him. He's amazing. And it's from a few years ago, but he did one with a neuroscientist or a psychologist about, it was around New Year's because everyone does their New Year's resolutions, about high performance. And the conclusion I brought from that was high performers, whether they're athletes or business people or artists, they don't have discipline. They have good habits. Or they have the habits that get them the results that they're wanting.
Right. And they do a lot less of the mental gymnastics or negotiating, right?
Right. Like, it's about removing the friction between you and the thing you want to achieve and increasing the friction between you and the thing you want to stop doing.
Right.
Right. And so having my work ready so that when I wake up, it's right there, is removing the friction between me and the work that I want to do.
Yep.
Right.
Little thing that helps you get there.
Yeah. And then making the choice, like today, I booked on my calendar, I am not available until 11:30 because that gives me time to do our thing and then have some respite. It's not, I'm available at 11. No, I need time to breathe because this is a lot of, pouring out. I need some time to like come back to me again. Right. And so understanding my physical and emotional and spiritual limits.
Yep.
And then building in a buffer and not feel guilty about that. And then my team at work is like, oh, Sydel's not available to 11:30. They plan around it. Nobody's like, oh, really, Sydel? What are you doing with that time? Are you sure you're not going to be ready for us but at 11? why not? Like that's all in my head. Nobody else is coming at me. That's all me. Right. And so having that awareness of, oh, there I go again, trying to cram too much in my day. So I'm like, nope, not available. So I've been starting to build buffers
Yeah, that's
of
so
time. And then at the end of the day, I'm not resentful. I'm not irritable. I'm not angry. I'm not exhausted.
true.
And guess what? Everyone loves to be around me. And then I get more done and my family's happy. And I don't have to be putting out emotional fires because people got their panties in a twist because Sydel was being a brat because she was
It's so
exhausted.
true. And I think though, back to your point way back when you're talking about the data and collecting the data and noticing our patterns and being honest with ourselves. Like similar to you, I've had to realize like if I'm traveling, I need a buffer day. Or like if I'm holding a retreat, I used to think, oh, the kids can come back. Like, the retreat ends at 12, the kids come back at 4.
Or 12:30.
Oh, yeah. It's not realistic. It's just not. And then everyone kind of, I'm irritated. They're not getting the best version of me. Like that example can be stamped out in so many different ways of our lives where we are either trying to cram things in, stuff them in, and we're setting ourselves up for it's just a negative
Yeah.
spiral.
And the biggest breakthrough for me happened when I was told by a coach, because I finally reached out for help going, I can't figure this out. Like I've done all the things, the car, the career, the house, the health. I was from the outside looked like I had it all. And I felt very empty and unfulfilled. And I was like, oh, I don't get it. What's going on? And I was doing some things for myself, but I wasn't vigilant about it. I was vigilant about getting my kids to school on time. I was vigilant about making sure they had a healthy meal 3 times a day. I was vigilant about making sure I was at work on time. I was vigilant about making sure I was meeting my clients' needs, but I was not vigilant about filling my own cup. I would do it occasionally and then I'd feel guilty and then like, oh, I can't do that again because I just did it yesterday. Like who said you can't do it again? Like what? And so when I had a coach tell me that it's my responsibility to take care of me because no one else is going to do it, I was like, duh. Like, and then like giving me permission.
Yeah.
And so I started every night I'd put my kids to bed and they were like 10 and 8 at the time. They were little. I put them to bed. We do our whole nighttime routine, sing song, right? And then I would go into my room and I'd light some candles and I'd pour a bubble bath every single night. And I remember one time one of my kids opened the bathroom and they're like, oh, sorry. Because I kind of looked over and they're like, whoops. It was like they walked in on a sacred ceremony. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny.
And now, I'm doing all this research on sleep and, I'm remembering I used to do that for myself. They say, no, candlelight only an hour before bedtime and have a warm bath and that'll help you sleep well. I was doing that like intuitively.
Yeah, I know.
And then time just gets away and you start to get busy and you've got la-di-da to do and more responsibilities and more things to take care of. And those habits kind of fell by the wayside. And honestly, I'm an empty nester now. I have no excuse. Like there is nobody asking anything from me.
Right.
It's
But
all me.
yeah. So then it becomes
Then I give
it,
it
right? Because you don't have an excuse anymore. I know it's always like comforting. We're like, well, if I didn't have this, then it would be a whole different story. But when that whatever that thing is gets removed.
And you're still doing the habit. It's a habit. That's all it is.
It is a habit and
it's a habit.
And yeah. I want to ask you about imposter syndrome because I feel that you have both a lot of personal experience with that and you have a lot of experience being like a thought leader and working with a lot of women on this, which is what do you think is at the root of self-doubt and imposter syndrome?
I think what's at the root of self-doubt and imposter syndrome is fear. Fear of, well, it could be 2 extremes of fear. Fear of being seen and heard truly, and fear of not being seen and heard. It's this, at least for me, when I was in business school, I took an amazing course called Group Processes. And they basically put you in a room with 25 other people for 2 weeks. And you're supposed to figure out what your role is, why you're there. And at the end of those 2 weeks, and I tried to be not, because I tend to be a leader, right? I'm like, okay, guys, this is what we're supposed to do. And like I sort of had an inkling that what we were supposed to be there for, but I wanted to wait because I didn't want to be that person.
Right.
Especially in business school where it's like 1 out of 4 of
that
you is a woman, like maybe 30% of us at the time. Now it's more like 50% at Wharton. Yay. But at the time it was 30% of us only. And so, I literally had men coming up to me after I had kind of called someone out on their sexism. Other person would come and say, you should really apologize because you made him uncomfortable. And I'm like, he made me uncomfortable. Like he was being inappropriate. And so I started kind of staying quiet because I didn't want to be the tall poppy, or I didn't want to be, seen as the B word.
Yes.
Even though all the girls in class would look at me and go, Sydel, say something.
Right.
Because I'm that person. Like I'm an Aries, I dress in red, I'm a Latina. I've got, I am fire all the way. And so I learned that trying to dampen my fire was just strangling me. And I learned to embrace that I'm a leader. I take charge. I make shift happen. And that's it. That's who I am. And that was a huge breakthrough for me, is really learning to embrace that. And then, I go into life and shift is falling apart. Shift is not happening. And then I start to doubt, well, am I really that powerful? Am I really that smart? Am I really that put together? Because everything's crumbling around me. All the perfect things that I just created for myself. Who am I after all? And is this really all the story I've been telling myself about what a powerful, strong, intelligent, problem-solving person I am? Yeah. Is that all a lie? It was scary, super scary. So my response was to work harder.
Yes.
To prove to the world and to myself that I am actually good and productive and I can achieve and accomplish. And then I just burned myself out trying to live up to some lofty image of what perfection means and what success means. And realizing when my son was 10, my daughter was 8, that if I wanted them to be happy and balanced and thriving, because at the time my son was very still defiant and could have these temper tantrums. And I'm like, oh my God, you're 10 years old. When is this going to end? Right. And I was leaping into the future of, oh my God, he's going to lose his family one day if he can't learn to manage his temper, because his dad lost his family because he couldn't manage his temper.
You jumped 20 years ahead.
Oh my God, I was like totally jumping into the future. And then I would get all stressed out because, oh my God, I'm failing my son and he's going to lose his family 20 years from now and it's my fault. And, and oh my God, I'm such an idiot. And now I'm a single mom and I don't have any help. And, all the regret from the past. Like I was like time traveling. I was not present. I was either way in the future or way in the past.
Right.
And the person here in the middle was just swirling. I don't know if everybody's felt that way. You're just swirling, constantly swirling, all the voices in your head. You're not enough.
I'm feeling it as you're saying it.
You're not enough. You're too much. It's all the you're nots and your twos, right? You're not successful enough. You're too educated. You're not, dedicated enough. You're lazy. It's like, oh my God, it was like constant. And I was just a mess. I wouldn't say a mess. I mean, I was getting stuff done. My kids were going to school. I wasn't like in bed I'm not that type of person. I'm not a depressive person.
That's how it appears.
It was like the low level, like from the outside, everyone wanted to be me.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to be me.
Right.
Like, there's something wrong with this picture. Like, I don't feel like I'm in the life I should be, but everybody thinks I am. What's going on here?
Okay. So give me some hope here. Like, how did you reconcile this?
I got help.
Yeah. What help?
As a very intelligent, I thought for years, like, oh, only weak people get coaching. I'm smart. I have an Ivy League degree. I can figure this out. I'm a very good problem solver. All I got to do is read all the books and all the self-help and all the da-da-da. And yeah, I made some insights, but my habits didn't change. My mindset didn't change. I got some information and I got to see what they were saying I should do, but didn't understand how to actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I raised my hand and said, I cannot figure this out by myself. I mean, I could, but it's probably going to take me like 20 years. And I'm like, I'm done suffering. Like, I don't want to suffer a minute longer. I was 39 that year. And I vowed to myself, I am not going to turn 40 without figuring this out. Like, I need to figure this out immediately because I know I'm not happy and I'm not thriving and I don't feel balanced. And I know my kids are watching me. And if I don't want my kids to have my life, I need to change my life because they're following me. They're going to mirror and monkey everything that I do because
So
that's how we learn.
I want to hear what was really the changes and like the difficulty. Because when we go through change, it is awkward. It is uncomfortable. We all fired up. Like, okay, got the coach. I'm ready to go. Like there is that like initial on-ramp of like excitement. And then I've experienced this just so many times. It's like you hit either the rock bottom or the really uncomfortable space where you're like, I think I just want to go back to the old way. Because is this really working?
No, I could not go back to the old way. I couldn't because I'd lived that way for 6 years and I was miserable. 6 years. I'm like, I am not, because I'm a happy, I am who you see.
Yes.
This is me.
Right.
Joyful, vibrant, light up a room when I walk in the door. And I was a shadow of the person I was when I got divorced. Like literally, my cousin's wife said, "Oh my God, her fire is out." Like, oh, like visually, right? And I had regained a modicum of that, but I still felt like I was just going through the motions and pretending.
Mm.
I wasn't really embodying joy. I was doing the things that a joyful person does.
Right.
I was teaching Zumba, taking my kids to all their classes, being the mom, being the teacher's assistant.
Yeah.
I was doing the role, but I didn't embody it. I didn't feel it in my body.
So what really helped get it into the body? Because I asked this because I even was recently talking to someone who was coming to me and she's like, I've tried it all. Like I've read the books and I know the things I'm supposed to do. And I've done the courses. And she's like, and I know I'm supposed to tell myself like, it's okay that I'm not in the job and I don't have the relationship that I want. And
well, I think it's a constantly evolving thing. I wish I could say it's like a light switch that goes off, but it's not. It's a slow peeling away of layers. And that's what I want to tell people is don't give up. I mean, the who you are today took you decades to get to where you are. It doesn't mean it's going to take you decades to get to the other side, but it is going to take time and patience and deep, deep honesty.
Yeah, radical honesty.
Radical honesty, tears, snot.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think my first breakthroughs in that, because, my personal transformation journey has happened over time. It's not just I took one course and I'm fine, right?
And it's also not linear. I want to just call that out. Like,
no, it's like,
oh, here we are again.
Well, my bubble bath time was during that time I was taking this nutritional transformation course with this woman who's incredible. And she was like, what do you love? What do you enjoy? Do more of that. What gives you pleasure? And we're not talking about sex, girls, not just sex, but and I decided I like bubble baths. I like scented candles. Okay, let's do more of that. Why am I not doing that? It doesn't cost anything.
Right.
I mean, it costs a little bit, but it's not like, taking a 3-week trip to Bali. You know what I mean? I would love to do that one day, but that's not happening when I have 2 little kids, right? So what can I do? Given this moment, what do I want? I think the 3 core things that we all struggle with because nobody teaches us is who am I? Who am I really? Beyond my titles and my roles that I play. Who am I when all of those are stripped away? What do I want? What do I want for me in this moment with no guilt? What do I want? And being able to ask for that and say what you need. Oh my God, years. It took me years to figure out how to do that.
It's know what that is.
As hell.
First, I think so often
knowing what that is. Yes. And so what do I want? Who am I? And why am I here?
Yeah.
What is my purpose?
Right.
And your purpose is not what you're doing for a living. It's who you are being every single moment and breath of the day.
Right.
And when when things come at you from left field, when the shit hits the fan, when people break up with you, when you lose a job or a loved one, who you are and what you want and your purpose never changes. Your role as a daughter may be gone now because your mom is gone. Your role as a wife may be gone now because your husband's gone. Your role as a vice president may be gone because your job is gone. But who you are and what you want and what your purpose is never, ever changes.
And no one can steal that from you.
And no one can steal that from you, regardless of whether you finished college or you got the degree or you climbed a mountain. Those are all awesome things. If that's what you want, yes, do it. Do more of that. And doing, what you want doesn't have to be this huge, lofty thing. I want to talk to Lauren this morning, right? I want my green smoothie for breakfast.
Yeah, it can be.
I told my kids, I want a podcasting mic because I'm going to start a podcast one day. So they got me a podcast. And the beautiful thing about when you know what you want, everybody knows how to make you happy. Because when you don't know what you want, there's no way your husband and your kids are going to make you happy. It's impossible because you don't know what makes you happy.
I love that. And I think that is so simple and powerful.
And that was the whole breakthrough of, oh my God, it is my responsibility. It is my responsibility. Instead of just going, oh, well, I don't feel happy. Well, my husband doesn't make me happy. Well, what makes you happy? Well, I don't know. Well, and how the hell is he supposed to figure it out? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Well, my kids drive me crazy. Well, what do you want? Well, I don't know. Well, how are you going to know to tell your kids what to do if you don't even know?
Right.
And I was like, blah. That was the first thing. And, that was just, that took me a while to unpack of what do I want? That was the first thing. What do I want? And there was something that I really, really wanted, but fear. I wanted to do what I'm doing now. When I was in that group coaching program, I realized, oh my God, I want to be her.
Right. If we have that feeling, we see, I see people on stages and I'm like,
oh my God,
like jealousy or like envy or how do they do it? Or it's like,
I'm like, oh my God, I want to be her, not her, but I want to do something like that. Like I want to have a room of 200 women and I'm helping lift their lids off their souls that are like holding them down, because there's so much potential and so much joy to be had if they would just know how to, let go of the shame and the fear and the responsibility. Right. And so I'm like, I want to do that. And then in jumps the itty bitty shitty committee. Oh, Sydel, but you don't have your life together. You don't have your life together. You're barely making ends meet. Look at you with a Wharton degree and you're living paycheck to paycheck. Who would follow you? Oh yeah, I guess you're right. I don't really know I'm doing it. And who are you? You don't even have a husband. Like, how are you going to be a role model to women? You don't even have a partner. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I just don't. And when are you going to find the time, Sydel? You have a job already and you're running around with your kids. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I don't have the time. And 8 years of that. 8 years. And it wasn't until I got broken up with. My fiance basically literally called me on a Monday at midnight and said he didn't want to be engaged to me anymore. And I was like, what? And it was him. It was his story. He came back later and wanted to get back together. But at the time, I remember for like literally weeks before that, my body, I had nausea, I had anxiety. I was like nervous all the time. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me? Because I am not that type of person. And I thought, well, it's because we're getting to be our anniversary and my relationships have always ended around anniversary times. And so I was getting really nervous. And when he broke up with me, part of me was relieved.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can trust myself. Right. I knew. My body knew. Just like my body knew the minute I met my ex-husband, he was not who he presented himself to be. But I didn't listen. Again, the head space was.
Well, we're really touching on something important, which is the head versus like our body. And I think especially when we've been in these highly academic, rigorous institutions that depend heavily on our brain and our logic and our reasoning and our thinking, it really feels initially unsafe and unknown to trust the wisdom.
Well, I didn't even know what that was, Lauren.
Yeah.
I thought that the fear let me start over. I thought that the unease in my body was fear, and that the voices in my head that were so strong was my intuition.
Right.
I had it backwards.
Isn't that interesting?
And it took me decades
Really interesting.
to understand that the voices, the cacophony of voices that were loud and shouting at me was my fear, trying to protect me and hold me back from making a scary decision. And my body and the quiet whisper telling me, slow down. You don't want to do that. Or jump in. You want that. That was my intuition.
Yeah. And it does.
I thought the quiet voices were my fear and the loud voices were it's the opposite.
Yeah.
And learning that was a whole other woo, right? And so 8 years later, when I decided, no, I'm going to be a coach, I'm going to start figuring out how this whole coaching thing works. I'm going to find a modality or something that I can identify with, something I can teach. And that's when I started learning about the Clarity Catalyst from Stanford University. And through that mindfulness and emotional intelligence training, I realized that disconnect.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, you mean all those voices that were telling me you don't have time, you're not enough, who are you? That was all fear. That's not really me. Hallelujah. Woo! I am free, right? Because now I can see the voice. I have a face to it. It has a name that's not mine.
Yeah.
That I can unidentify from and say, talk to the hand, not listening. Beautiful, Franny.
What's the name of it?
I've got a whole, like, women have between 6 and 9 of these sub personas or gremlins or whatever. To me, they make up your whole itty bitty shitty committee. Like, there's a whole committee. There's not just one voice, right? And they're all in the back seat, by the way. They take a ride with you every day. They don't go away.
Right.
But mine have gotten quieter and quieter. And I've learned to be like, here's a lollipop. Keep your mouth busy. I'm not listening. Right. I'm not listening. I'm going this way. You guys do not, like, Elizabeth Gilbert has this awesome quote in her book, Big Magic, that she says fear gets in the car every time she sits down to write.
Yeah.
And she tells fear, we have 3 rules. You don't get to give directions. You don't get to drive. And you, my friend, do not control the radio station. I'm tuning into the frequency that I want to be tuned into. You do not get to take me down the frequency to you're gonna, turn into hell in a handbasket. You're going to hell in a handbasket, right? I'm tuning to the frequency of possibility and potential and intention and staying open. You do not get to choose my frequency. And so that to me has been a huge breakthrough in terms of really understanding what the voices are, B, what they're saying to me, what's their mantra. And it doesn't really even matter where they came from, honestly, because they're there. Like, the work that I do with people is more about how to get from where you are to where you want to go. If you need a healing journey of what's going on and where these fears came from, that's for a therapist, right? Which is also super important. I've done plenty of therapy in my day, and I still go to a therapist less frequently, but regularly, to unwind some of these things that still pop up.
Yeah.
And so I think learning how to, and then listen and trust that inner voice that always knows. I tell my students, yak, you always know. You always know. And when you can learn how to trust that, even like little things like, Sydel, you're running out of eggs. And you're like, no, I got eggs. I'm going to drive home. And you get home. Oh, freaking hell, I don't have eggs. I knew it. Right. And learning how to trust that. And that's the work that I do with people, is kind of helping them, number one, start to recognize and be mindful of the voices.
Yeah, that's
because when you don't have the awareness, they are running your life. They've got the radio station, they've got the map, and they are driving. And you wonder why you're going in circles, crashing into walls, going backwards. Because you are not in control of your thoughts. And that's why mindfulness training is so important. And it doesn't mean that I sit in kumbaya for an hour every day. I don't have time for that. Like, I have a life and I have things I'm going to accomplish. And there was a time in my life I did a lot of it because I needed that extra training.
Yeah.
right? Just like you go to business school or
Right. It's a
get
muscle. And
it's
so
a muscle. You get a coach, you go to the gym, and after a while you're like, okay, I got this. Or
yep.
I gave a talk one time at my Lauder reunion, and a friend from the back of the room goes, can you just give me a book, Sydel? Can you just give me a book about mindfulness and I can like learn it on my own? And I'm like, learning mindfulness is kind of like learning how to ride a bike. You can watch YouTube videos. You can listen to podcasts about how amazing bike riding is and how good it is for you. And you can read books about the mechanics of a bicycle. But until you get your ass on that seat, you're never going to learn how to ride a bike.
So
And it's much easier if you've got somebody holding the seat for you or giving you some training wheels so you don't fall and hurt your knee and give up because it's too hard. Right? Until you can like start going and you go fly, and then the coach lets go of your seat and you're like, foo, and you're like, oh my God, why was that so hard? That's so easy.
yeah.
But in the beginning, you're off balance and you're like, I don't know, does the turning wheel go this way? And what pedal do I use first? And how do I get on? You don't need it. You could figure it out by yourself, but you're going to have a lot of bumps and bruises and you might just give up.
Yes. Exactly. Oh, and we big old brains think, well, we can figure this out and we can learn it.
I was the same way. I remember my first coach was a friend that I met salsa dancing. And he was a coach for Tony Robbins. This was back in 2006. Okay. 2005, maybe even. Like I was a year after getting divorced and I was like determined to get my life back. And everyone was a new friend because I hadn't lived in California for 15 years. So everyone wanted to know my story. And so he was an amazing coach because he would just listen. Okay. And he was like, well, what part of you did you have in that? And I'm like, what do you mean? What part did I have it in? It's like, I was not ready to go there. And then like a year later, I reached out to him. I'm like, oh, I feel horrible. There's something wrong with me. I'm so depressed. No one wants to date a single mom with 2 kids. My kids were like 5 and 3 at the time. So I felt very sorry for myself. And, all this baggage from my divorce and who am I? And he's like, Sydel, first of all, get over yourself. You're beautiful. You're smart. You're a hard worker. You're an amazing woman. Don't worry about it. You're going to find the right guy. And then he said, well, what do you want to do for yourself this year? So I gave him, oh my gosh, you're right. I don't have any goals. Maybe that's why I'm depressed. Because, I usually have goals. I'm a goal-oriented person, right? So I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's what I need. I need goals. Okay. So he's like, 4 things you want to do this year. Because it was like right around New Year's. I'm like, okay, this is good. I want to build a new website for my business. I want to grow by 10%, 15% so I can hire somebody to do this job that I'm doing that I don't want to do. I want to take my kids skiing and I want to go visit my dad with my kids. Bullshit is what he told me. And I was pissed. I'm like, what do you mean bullshit? He's like, that's not what you want, Sydel. I'm like, how can you tell me what I want and what I don't want? He's like, Sydel, I'm not talking about your kids. I'm not talking about your career. And I'm not talking about your family. What do you want for you? I had no idea, Lauren. I was like a deer in the headlights. I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea. And he's like, hello, why do you think you're depressed? So he wouldn't let me get off the phone until I gave him 4 things. One was I wanted to take a photography class. I wanted to go to Italy. I wanted to exercise more. And I wanted to learn to ask for what I need because I knew that was something that I wasn't good at. And he said, okay, I'm going to give you a 5th thing. Accept yourself for who you are. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a cool person. I like myself. That's easy. He goes, okay, Sydel. So he knew something I didn't know.
Yep.
And I was too proud.
Right.
Because he invited me to go to Tony Robbins weekend, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I am not spending a freaking $1,000 to go listen to some hoorah in a big stadium. I can figure this out.
Oh my.
4 years later,
Were you
I'm
at the
still
hoorah?
stuck.
Oh.
I mean, I accomplished, I signed up for photography class that night, even though I didn't even own a camera. By March, I had a trip planned to Italy with one of my best friends from business school. In January, I got invited to join a salsa dancing team. Like, who even knew that was a thing? So I was getting exercise and dancing twice a week. Those 3 things that were external, check, check, check. Because we're good at that. Check, check, check. But the internal, learning to ask for what I need, accepting myself for who I am, that took me another 6 years.
Yeah. And it's an ongoing.
And
Like,
that
oh,
was when I hit another rock bottom.
right.
Like,
I'm like, oh, I
why
love
am
this
I
version of
not
myself.
happy? Here I am again. I'm doing things for myself, just like Tony. It's just like they said I should do. Like I started teaching Zumba, so that was my exercise. I was traveling in the summer when my kids were gone. I was still doing the stuff.
Yeah.
And I still wasn't happy. I'm like, oh, it's all that other stuff you told me I have to do.
Right. Exactly.
That I need help for. I'm not getting it.
Mm.
I'm not getting it. And so that's been my journey, is learning to ask for help is probably the biggest game changer. And understanding and accepting I cannot figure this out by myself. And that's okay. Because there are people in this world whose purpose is to help me figure it out. I mean, that's why they were put on this planet. So actually, by not reaching out to them, I am not helping them fulfill their purpose.
So true. It's so true. And
I am so grateful for my clients because they help me. And like when I go to class, they're like, oh, thank you so much for class today. I'm like, oh my God, thank you guys for being here. Or I couldn't do my life's work.
It's a positive feedback loop. It's really,
it's amazing.
So amazing. So amazing. I always like to finish these off with 3 like rapid fire round questions.
Okay.
So don't overthink it. I know you won't, but first one is imposter syndrome, people pleasing, or perfectionism. Which one of those 3 is like still the biggest thorn on your rose bush?
People pleasing.
What's a lie you still tell yourself?
A lie I still tell myself? I'm not good enough.
And what's something that's a little edgy that's happening in your life right now that you feel it's like nudging you inside to share it in this moment?
Something edgy. Oh, I already told you about my book.
Secretive, or something that's been a little bit in the shadows that you're like, it's
this is going to sound so superficial, but I'm thinking of buying a new car.
What's superficial about it? I mean,
because it's like a luxury car and it feels so uncomfortable to like be seen driving around in this car. Like, what does that say about me? Am I really, is material possessions really that important? Am I so superficial that I need to have that car and not the basic?
Right.
I'm battling with that right now. Right. And so I'm like, I tell people, oh, it's who you are. It doesn't matter. Blah, blah. But then deep inside, I have this really deep desire to have this really beautiful car. Like, oh my God, what does that say about me? Am I shallow? Right. And so
I understand. You know what you are in the Enneagram? What your type is?
I'm a 2. I'm a helper.
Okay, great. Well, that's why you probably give so much of it, that for you to actually ask for it is uncomfortable.
Totally. Yeah. I'm a 2 with a 1 wing. So
that's the reformer perfectionist.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes. In fact, I have the type 2 helper right here. Becoming deeply unselfish is my.
I love you 2s. I bring a lot of 2s into my life because you're such a gift and a godsend. I'm a number 3. I'm an achiever. So having people like you, I'm like, wait, really? There are people though that.
Well, I'm a helper first, and then the challenger second.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then achiever third, but they're all like close.
Yeah.
The challenger achiever is neck and neck, but then the helper is just above that. So, in fact, I resisted being a 2. I'm like, I want to be the achiever.
They say actually when was the last time you took this? Recently or a long time ago?
Probably about a year ago.
Okay, kind of recently. Because they say that a lot of women are 2s that are not maybe really 2s because they haven't done the work and know themselves. And so it's bicultural.
Oh no, I'm a super 2 because so much of my decision making, I watch myself make decisions as what is so-and-so going to say? What is so-and-so going to feel? What is so-and-so what's this going to do to my relationships? Right. And so it's not so much about achievement, but it's about maintaining relationships.
Yeah.
And even in the face of achievement, what is that achievement going to do to my relationships? You know what I mean? So it's interesting. Yeah.
I hear you. Oh, this has been fun. So fun. I mean, I always love my time with you.
I know we could talk all day. Like I tell people, I could talk about this stuff all day long.
Oh, I love you.
Love
Thank
you
for this.
too.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you'd like to be in contact with our community, you can find us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Ivy League Sisters, or visit our website at ivyleaguesisters.com. And if you found this conversation valuable, I invite you to share it with another woman, another friend, another loved one, because it's through our sharing that we inspire one another and deepen our connections. Until next time, remember, you're not alone. We are in this crazy thing called life together.